Peace and blessings, everybody. Welcome to Kadika, the peer review science channel. This is Netanel. So I addressed this paper yesterday. Um, I've been seeing a lot of because there were a lot of people on YouTube and a lot of people on Facebook, Reddit, a lot of social media sites I'm connected with, and just misinterpreting this data. Yesterday I did like an analysis on it to the best of my ability. I'm not a geneticist. I'm not in college for genetics. I'm not in college for biology. But I went ahead and I registered with my college in the principles of biology. Maybe I should, get into just a little bit of basic principles of biology. And then I registered for human genetics. And I think biology is a prerequisite for me to get into human genetics. So I will be in biology and human genetics so I can make better inferences on these papers, better inferences for people who are misinterpreting these genetic papers. And some of these people who are misinterpreting these papers, some of the people who are misinterpreting these genetic papers have like a race theory narrative towards it. So this is what I just don't like that, because when you're doing research or you're analyzing these papers, they are telling you the limitations of these papers. They are telling you what to do, what not to assume in these genetic papers. Most, or at least 100% of genomic studies are not apodictic, and we find like quasi-religious people getting into genetics, etc. So that's why I contacted my college, and I will be in a genetic elective. I just want to know basic principles of genetics instead of relying on like secondary sources. I just at least want to have a basic understanding of genetics so I can make better inferences. But right now, I will be making inferences on basic historiography, historical um, history or historiography of the Nile Valley in general, and why this is not surprising to no historian. This data is not only not surprising to a historian, it's not surprising to no Egyptologist that you will find a individual with 80% North African DNA and still be considered black, right? And lives in the Nile Valley. So a lot of misinterpretation online. One of the misinterpretations is that this man represents the whole population, that all of the population is Fertile Crescent. I didn't hear a lot of stuff. So I'll show like a Facebook quickly. So this is a guy on Facebook, or he called the archaeologist, right? And in this, he left out the African part. As you see the pictures, like I screenshotted it, then he left out the African part. He left out this part as well. He didn't even show that they reconstructed this North African indigenous Egyptian that lives in the Nile Valley as black. He didn't even put that in there. um he also just showed parts of the reconstruction, which is problematic. Why not show everything? He also had the chronology wrong. If you read his Facebook post, he had Middle Kingdom. It's actually an old Egyptian man. Actually, he didn't even put that the man had 80% North African percentages or ancestry. He just only put the connection as if it's saying that these people or the whole population are Fertile Crescent. And that's not what the paper said. So the purpose of this analysis is to be real short, real quick, and just highlight limitations of this data. Something that a lot of people are not doing. They're not looking at the limitations of this information. They're just taking one individual and just saying it means the whole Egyptian civilization. It does not. So we're going to go through some sources just to show to have some level headedness about this. This stuff is not religion. Genomic papers are not the Quran or the Bible or something like that. Um, it's not apodicted in no possibility. This paper is good because it shows a methodology to how to get remains from jars or from um, um, the method of extracting remains from Kemet. So they give a better method or a roadmap to future research to get better genes. This is the purpose of this paper, right? So they only got one individual. So let's get into it. So I highlighted everything. I'm gonna read quickly, and I underlined the most important parts. So it states quickly: ancient Egyptian society flourished millennia, reaching this peak during the dynastic period. However, owing to poor DNA preservation, questions about regional interconnectivity over time have not been addressed because whole genome sequencing has not yet been possible, right? Whole genome sequencing. So they're the first one to sequence one individual using this excellent method. So this will tell you right there that it's just not apodictic. These studies are not apodictic yet, and for us not to panic and go all out with race theories so fast, right? So let's continue. This is the abstract. I haven't even gotten into the paper. So it says most of his genome is best represented by North African Neolithic ancestry among available sources at present. Yet, approximately 20% of his genetic ancestry can be traced to genomes representing the eastern Fertile Crescent, including Mesopotamia and surrounding regions. This genetic affinity is similar to the ancestry appearing in Anatolia and the Levant during the Neolithic and the Bronze Age. Although more genomes are needed to fully understand, y'all understand that. Um, it's a big limitation here, and these scholars and geneticists here are excellent. They let us know, but the problem is media, race theorists, Egyptians, people, these race theories, they just won't stop, right? So they not letting the people know that this research has is not fully understood. This research is not complete. This is only a research as a roadmap to get complete, right? To get a lot of data. So let's continue here. It says, although more genomes are needed to fully understand the genomic diversity of early Egyptians, our results indicate that contacts between Egypt and the Eastern Fertile Crescents were not limited to objects and imagery, but also encompass human migrations. They are attributing the Fertile Crescents to what we call, and I think numerous people overlap in numerous fields of cultural diffusion. All right, as a historian, I am very familiar with cultural diffusion. Culture diffusion is only some borrowed elements from both cultures, rather for migration, objects, etc. And this is why I say this is not a surprise. When I seen the paper, I was just like, wow, I like the method that they did. Now I'm wondering, can we use that method further south? So where they was at is not a surprise for Tahino or North Africans to be. And we're going to look at the Egyptological record. Back in 1986, you have scholars talking about North African relations with ancient Egypt. So again, genomic studies have problem with preservation of DNA in that area. Let's continue real quick. So I highlight the most important so it won't be long here. So it says the population has been considered to be of local origin. So this kills any type of Mesopotamian origin. It doesn't say that. It clearly says, as we reading, it says has been considered to be of local origin. All right. With limited input from neighboring regions. All right. That's all y'all have to do is read. Right. So it says, yet more recent archaeological evidence shows that trade connections existed across the Fertile Crescent since at least the 6th millennium BCE. This is well known in history. I studied it in college. I studied the Mesopotamian and the Egyptian trade connections, the borrowings, etc., etc. Not just with them, but with others. Others did it as well. Now it says, if not earlier, with the advent of Neolithic package. The Neolithic package, of course, is domesticated animals and plants that was, floating around the world. Now it says cultural exchange continued to develop through the late 4th millennium BCE with the growing Sumerian civilization of Mesopotamia. See that this is cultural exchange. This is only uh cultural, like just cultural borrowings. That's it. That's what they attributed to. Now it says, however, the lack of ancient genomes, particularly for the early periods of Egyptian dynasty history, remains a barrier to our understanding of population continuity and gene flow in the region. They simply don't know. These genomic papers are not apodictic, and they should not require race theories to explain them. So let's continue. Although individuals from ancient Egypt were subject to the first effort to isolate ancient DNA, direct genome sequences has remained elusive because of the challenging regional DNA preservation conditions. I'm pretty sure most of us know about the conditions of DNA preservation, and this is why this paper is so excellent, because it gives us a roadmap to have a better method of extracting from those jars and pots of the officials. So this is a good research, but when misinterpreted as a race theory, this one I have to say something, right? So it says, so far only 3 individuals from Abusa El Malek have yielded nuclear DNA, all posting date all post dating the emergence of dynastic Egypt by thousands of years. So it came way later after the dynastic Egyptian by thousands of years. Again, these this paper peer review is excellent for its method and how they are retrieving the data, but far as being apodicted, it's simply not. It just tells you right in the paper. Now I highlight this. This is never highlighted. Now, if we go to more Facebook, I think if we go to more Facebook explanations of this paper in race theories, they don't mention all of the data. They pick and choose what they have, what they want to see, and do not comprehend the entirety of the paper. It's like they didn't even read the conclusion. So race theories, man, it can be very dangerous for Black people. It's not good to do that. Just like me doing race theories. You remember Hitler was doing race theories against the Jews. It's not good, man. Race theories are not good, man. It can lead to other problems for Black people. All right, so here's another one. So I'm giving y'all examples of problematic issues with media in misinterpreting DNA, genetics, and these genetic studies. All right, so here's another one. All right, so this one says latest study: ancient Egyptians had Amazigh origins. No, that's not true. See that? Start off as something inaccurate. That's not what this paper stated. This paper don't state that ancient Egyptians had Amazigh origins. That's not what it said, right? Don't say that. A testament to the greatness of North Africa's indigenous civilization. It doesn't say that in the paper. So this is another Facebook post. So social media is like infested with these race theories. And Facebook says nothing. Also, peer reviewed data said Facebook benefits off of race baiting, race theories, etc. I didn't say that. Peer reviewed data said it. So as we see here, of misinterpretation of non-apodictic genomic material, it doesn't say that ancient Egyptians had Amazigh origins, because this man did not represent the population. It was only one sample. So let's continue. So it says, now, as we seen that Facebook, he didn't put the description of how they reconstructed. They reconstructed this North African as being black man. He's have black skin, dark to black skin, right? So let's continue. Although acknowledging known limitations and predicting phenotypic traits in understudied populations, the Nuwayrat individual is predicted to have had brown eyes, brown hair, skin pigmentation ranging from dark to black. skin with a lower probability of intermediate skin color. So there is a lower probability for this black Egyptian to be fair or light skinned. I didn't say that. The actual paper said it, but notice that you don't find North Africans and you don't find racist Egyptians saying that this man is black. When they make posts, they only show the little 20% Fertile Crescent ancestry that was kind of derived from cultural diffusion, and that's it. They don't mention other things. If they mention Morocco or something, they say that that represents the whole population. They are misinterpreting this information. All right, so let's continue. Now let's go here. It says, although we caution that these results are based on a single Egyptian genome, they mirror another study that found evidence of gene flow from the Mesopotamian and Zagros regions into surrounding areas, including Anatolia, during the Neolithic, together with archaeological evidence for cultural exchange. So this is cultural diffusion. The element of Fertile Crescent ancestry in that individual is only by way of cultural exchange. This is what they said. I'm not doing race theory interpretations. Now it says these findings open the possibility that wider cultural and demographic expansion originating in the Mesopotamia region reach both Egypt and Anatolia during this period. So this is the Fertile Crescent elements or Fertile Crescent ancestry that did seep into the Nile Valley is only due to cultural diffusion, as they are explaining clearly. Now it says related movements may have introduced the Mesopotamian like ancestry more recently in Egypt. We tested this by applying the same for QPADM model to target groups from the Bronze Age Anatolia and Levant. Genomes from the Bronze Age Levant were grouped into 8 archaeological sites. So here again, all right, related movements may have introduced Mesopotamian like ancestry in Kemet. So this means that they do not have Mesopotamian origins, right? It is only by way of cultural diffusion. It says here, moreover, it is notable that both our Q modeling and admixture clustering excluded any substantial ancestry in the Nuwayrat genome related to the 4,500-year-old genome from Malta, Ethiopia, or other individuals in Central, Eastern, or Southern Africa. Nevertheless, we find that the Nuwayrat genome fits as an equally good source as Levant Chalcolithic groups for the West Eurasian related component of East African pastoralist genomes. But ancient DNA data are still missing for many putative source regions. So again, right here, they have missing ancient DNA is still missing. This is not apodicted, yet race theories interpretations still go on. It never stops. Even when the authors say the data that they have is not predicted, it doesn't matter. Race theories, they take it and just don't care. Yes, you have ancient DNA still missing for many putative source regions. So it's, to me, as a historian, as someone who was planning on getting my master's in linguistics, this is not a apodicted study. I look at this as a excellent study for future and a roadmap for future progress into extracting DNA, as this paper stated. That's it, right? So let's continue. Let's go to the conclusions and wrap it up. It says our results demonstrate the feasibility of ancient genome sequencing from the earliest stages of the Egyptian dynastic civilization. And I want to hone on to that. Remember, the dynastic period, people, that's a later that's later in Egyptian historiography. The dynastic civilization, right, is a later civilization into the complete historiography of the Nile Valley. So the dynastic civilization already would have borrowings from Mesopotamia, North Africa. There will be North Africans in Nile Valley during this period. There will be Mesopotamians coming and fro from cultural exchange. This is well known. Egyptologists, archaeologists, Mesopotamian scholars have written about this from 1950s all the way to now. This is not nothing new in scholarship. The DNA data just getting it, but historiography been had it. The historical records of Kemet been said that Taino groups are in relation to um, Nile Valley Africans. It's no secret they will be in a melting pot with each other. I mean, come on, right? So it says our results demonstrate the feasibility of ancient genome sequencing from the earlier stages of Egyptian dynastic civilization. So they are only at the dynastic civilization here. That's it. It says one possible explanation for the successful whole genome retrieval is the pot burial. So the remains were in the pot burial. Thus, for it is a roadmap for future research, and it preserved the DNA that allowed them to do the test. So this is what this research really is about: how they sequence the whole genome from one individual by getting his remains out of a pot. But let's continue. It says, which may have favored a degree of DNA preservation not previously reported in Egypt. This contributes to the roadmap for future research to obtain ancient DNA from Egypt. This is the hallmark of this paper. Race theories, I'm not understanding them. The paper doesn't illustrate any race theory in it. And then it tells you that it's not apodictic. Now it says, although our analysts are limited to a single Egyptian individual who, on the basis of his relatively high status burial, may not be representative of the general population. You understand it? So as we see here, let me show the face you have, let me show this Facebook race theory interpretation. This is a Facebook race theory interpretation where he says that ancient Egyptians have Amazigh origins. It doesn't say that. See, you see what I mean about when race theories, pseudoscience and misinterpretation. It's very dangerous. You can't be doing that, right? You are excluding whole periods of Kemet. You are excluding all the way from Nubia, which is the first district of Egypt. I hope y'all know that Nubia is the first district of Egypt. Nubia is the first nome of Egypt. Thus, for you're all the way in the 16th nome. As a historian, I know you're all the way in the 16th nome, which came way later. Even though you're in a dynastic period old Egyptian, these nomes are these nomes are illustrated later. Dynastic period old Egyptian, well, the Old Kingdom is later. That period is a later period. All right. So again, here we go. Here go race theories where you have, it's high Amazigh origins for the whole Egyptian population. It didn't say that. You know what I mean? It just didn't say that. It's so sad, but it didn't say that. So let's continue though. This what it actually said. It says, although analysts are limited to one single individual on the basis of his high status, right, may not be representative of the population. So we cannot say that nothing is the origins of anything because it don't represent the general population. All right. So it says our results reveal ancestry links to earlier North African groups and populations of the Eastern Fertile Crescent. Analogous links were indicated in our biological affinity analysis of dental traits, craniometrics for the individual, as well as in previous morphological studies based on 4 samples. The genetic links. Now, here is where the paper really hones in on what is going on really. So it says the genetic links with Eastern Fertile Crescent. I want y'all to hone in on that. The genetic links with the Eastern Fertile Crescent. So this is the 20% that he has. So it says it mirror. I wouldn't know what a mirror is. A mirror reflects exactly, right? So it also mirror previously documented cultural diffusion. Oh, so the Fertile Crescent portion is only due to cultural Diffusion. This is what they assumingly attributing this to. It could be different, but this is what the data saying. So this can't be representative of Fertile Crescent origins and all of this stuff. Mesopotamian, I didn't hear all type of stuff. I didn't hear Amazigh origins of the whole population. When they clearly say this one individual do not represent the general population. It has to be other regions. This is only a 16th, it's near the 16th known. That region is already cross culturally related to the Taino tribes in that area, as historiography of Egypt says before this genome. I don't need genomes. I have primary material. Um, Historians, we go by primary material. If the primary material don't have it, we kind of dismiss it. I'm not into. I ain't gonna say if only the primary material, because in history and historical methodology, I don't have to just use primary material. I can use secondary material. I can use other various materials to extract historical information. But primary material is the biggest node. Primary material is very important, especially for attested cultures like the Black African culture of Kemet. Now, let's see here. It says future whole genome sequencing of DNA from more individuals will allow for a more detailed and nuanced understanding of ancient Egyptian civilization and its inhabitants. So this is not predicted. I'm sorry, y'all. I don't do race theory interpretations. I just go with the data say. The conclusion said it. I'm going with these scholars. I cannot go with they are the origins of the whole civilization. It doesn't say that. This one man does not represent may not represent the general population. We can't be saying that this one man, I told you, for the whole ancient Egyptian period, because they are different periods. Each period in a separate historical context was affected by neighboring ones, as in all civilizations, in all cultures. All right. So let's look at this map. I'm trained in maps, so I love maps. That's part of being a historian, looking at maps. So rarely you'll see these guys showing the actual reconstruction, which they said he's black. This is a black man, according to the authors. He has dark to black skin, thus for he's a black African. All right, and let's see. And this the some of the proof for the testing, the DNA test, which is lovely. I love the way he did this. And here's the pot though, that they found, or the jar, the pottery vessel, that it was a rock cut tomb. And this is lovely. And man, I would love for them to do this in where the civilization actually was birthed at. That would appease me. That's what everyone is waiting. Everyone is waiting for them to go deep within the south, which is Nubia, which is the first Sapat. All right. And everybody's waiting for them to go from what my idea as a historian, I'm going to give them my idea of where to try to excavate. It's going to be from the first gnome to the 14th gnome. From first to 14, I'm only interested in that. These are the hallmarks of the beginnings of the development of the civilization. You understand? So going all the way up there in that region is automatically going to be, it's not a secret, it's automatically going to be a North African type of connection there. All right. So as you see here, we are looking at where it's located, and of course it's just not in the southern part. See right here? So that's where the man is located at. Nuwayrat, pre-Bronze Age. We go to this map and you see it's all the way up there, right? And this is already near, kind of in proximity with the Near East. It's going to be those elements there. And then this is in the area really near the 16th gnome. So you're going to have big cross gene flow coming from North Africa, right? North Africa. It's no shot, no secret. And I'm about to show y'all some peer review data on the Egyptian record showing that North Africans, even scholars from 1986, no genetic. We don't need genetic material because we have primary material. Now, it will be good to do the genetic studies, but I really don't need, because ethnicity is not based off of pure genetic studies. Ethnicity is kind of in anthropology, which I'm in anthropology, is kind of based on various more complex factors than base ancestry. Ethnicities are not based strictly off our ancestries. They are based off of worldviews, religious beliefs, clothing, food, I mean, all type of things, warfare, weapons. Uh, for example, if we go to historiography of Kemet, Nubians are known for their weapons. You know what I mean? They're the land of the bow people. They Tassetians. They are of the bow. So anything can form a ethnic group. Ethnic group don't have to necessarily be, oh yeah, I have this ancestry, so I'm not black. No, that's not how it operates. And also, I would like to mention during this time period, actually, Kemetu was just calling themselves black. Actually, which makes this more interesting, right? They found the inscription in the Levant, well, in Sinai region. I ain't gonna say the Levant, but in the Sinai region. And this inscription was of a man calling himself black. The Egyptian was calling himself black, right? In primary materials. This is different. It hits different when it's in primary materials. Uh, Here, this is historians' methods. This is what I use to extract data, right? And when I use these type of methods, I use primary sources. I look at what the sources say, right? Which can be totally different or totally distinct what is found in the genetic record. So it doesn't mean anything that someone is of a different ancestry. I have Euro Asian ancestry, but I am ethnically black. I identify with the culture of black. Also, I study the language because ethnicity is based off of language, religion. It can be a complex mixture of all three, right? So if someone accepts your culture, now you are a Greek. You can have no matter which your ancestry, right? Now, when I look into languages of Black Africa, and I look at reconstructions. The reconstructions have to be some type of scientific, though it is a hypothetical reconstruction. We go to Proto Bantu and we look into what they have reconstructed. Even the Proto-Bantu speakers were saying that they were black. They have lexical glosses that says that they were black. This is 2003 to 3, 4, 5,000 years ago. They're describing themselves as black in a Proto-Bantu spectrum. Now we go to historiography and records of Kemet, and we see that they are describing themselves with the adjective modifier as being black. Their blackness may be a ethnic indicator of skin trait, belief in a black deity, which Asar was attributed to being black, and he was considered black. Um, I mean, it's complex, but they were saying it in primary material, so it's kind of interesting to find an Egyptian, right? Which I don't really pay attention to his ancestry. His ancestry means anything to me, but he's along the 16th known. During that time period, Egyptians was calling themselves black all the way in the Sinai region. Egyptians who was doing excavations themselves for pyramid building are inside Sinai to get things in trade. They are calling themselves black in primary materials. So as a historian, I look into other factors, multidisciplinary approaches, multidisciplinary factors, not just non-apodictic genome papers that come thousands of years later. We have to look at the primary materials as well. So let's get into the connections. Now, I particularly chose this right here because This is created all the way in the 80s, right? You actually, in this UNESCO Digital Library, okay? So we go to UNESCO Digital Library, you have scholars already taught, this the 80s, already talking about Libico-Berber, right? Relations with ancient Egypt, the Tahino and Egyptian records. Already. Y'all understand me? Well, it definitely may be some as I look at this, it definitely may as in 2025, I look at this, I find things I disagree with. But we already know this ain't a something that is not known in Egyptological historiography. It's already known that those groups of North Africa were populating the Nile, were in very deep interactions with those blacks from the Nile, and that's what it was. It's all through the historical records. All right, the North Africans, even to the point with the Morty King Morty. If y'all heard of him, he was at war or at odds, according to primary materials, with the Egyptian pharaoh, right? They were getting into it. A guy from Mori, which was Mauritania or something like that, and that chief was warring with someone from the Nile Valley. So that would have been interactions, cultural interactions, etc., from those wars. Also, it's probably wasn't mentioned in the Egyptian record where they may have had North Africans coming over, right, of high order and conquering certain tribes and taking over certain portions right there. So it's always been a very long interaction with North Africans, Libico-Berber relations, with ancient Egypt, man. This is the 80s right here. I'm just showing y'all, man. It's not nothing new. Again, on Kadika Oyal, I take pride in method. I really like their method. That's what I'm more honed on. Anything, I'm not honed on one individual with already DNA. I would already expect them to have in that region that they are in. Now, if they are in further south near Nubia, and they have Libyan connections, then that probably says a little something to me, just a little bit, because they were also going all the way down. Um, I think in one Sapat they found the Tahinu in the actual inscriptions, and that's further down Upper Kemet. So that still wouldn't be a shot. But I want to see them do my inference on this, or I would like to see them go down in the south part. Not they are staying very close to the proximity of Asia. It's just they not trying to leave that proximity. They need to come down. If they come down, that's where they're going to get all their answers they need. They're going to get a wide diversity of ancestries. You're going to get a wide variety of ancestries dealing with Ethiopia, a wide variety of ancestries dealing with Central Africa, South Africa. It's going to be a lot of diverse ancestries dealing with blackness. Once you go all the way down, you have to go to the beginning portions of the Egyptian civilization. You can't just remain up near there. And they just not trying to go near those pockets. And then what's interesting to me is that they are still close to the Asian area, and still we find 80%. He was the 80% North African DNA. Well, ancestry. That says a lot. And he was black skinned. They predicted him to be black skinned and low probability for him to be fair skinned. Okay. So this needs to be expressed. The limitations need to be expressed. And we should give this paper credit on the fact that it provided a roadmap for us to get better data, etc. Right. So again, historians already know that you will find Libyans in that, especially that area they were in. We would like them to go all the way down into the beginning. They avoid that. They're not going to do it. I guarantee you, they're not going to do it. I want to do it. I want to make a team, and only way we can do it, we have to stick together and stop trying to fight over quasi-religious ideas. The guys that are in quasi-religion, you're wasting your time arguing. That's all you got to do. Save your money. You have black researchers. Let's get it together. Let's do it. I'm willing to work with at least 15 black scientists, black researchers, and we can just go over there, do some excavations, get it legalized, get what we have to do, and do some DNA studies on mummies near Nubia, the first Sapat, right? That's only fair. This is where the civilization began according to peer-reviewed data. According to peer-reviewed data, the civilization began in Upper Kemet. So we want to go from the first nome of Upper Kemet to the second nome. It's going to take money. It's going to take a long time, but still, that'll be a better genomic sequencing rather than staying all the way up in the middle of it's just nonsensical to me. You know what I mean? This is a good example of how to extract the data, but this is not a good example to tell us the overall population, which will be probably impossible. Because in each historical context of the Nile Valley, different events may have shaped genetic structures differently. So, that's my take on it. All right. So I want y'all to enjoy your day. And oh yeah, I want to give a quick assessment on ethnicity. A lot of people think ethnicity. They say black, is not this, and black is not that, and I hear a lot of, again, race theories and pseudoscience. I'm in anthropology, so we study ethnicity. All right, so let's read what ethnicity really is according to peer-reviewed data. Ethnic identities usually involve tangible practices such as common language. Now, I just want to stay there. Ethnic identities even involve common language? Okay, so remember I told you that if I checked at least 200 Black African languages, including ancient languages and reconstructed proto-languages. I can show y'all from 200 Black African languages that they called themselves Black before any encountering. I can show you where Africans called themselves Black in the Nile Valley in old Egyptian period, well, the old kingdom, on rock art. They called themselves Black men numerous times. It's not just one. Not only from its earliest stance, they are calling themselves Black in its entire historiography in every phase of the language. I look into living Black languages, they're calling themselves Black. I look into Black languages that's older than 2,000 years. They're calling themselves Black. I look into languages that's older than the slave trade or any encounter with Portuguese or Europeans. They're calling themselves Black. So, yes, language is an indicator for ethnicity, right? So it says relationship to a particular place. See, that's also can be your ethnicity. Common cultural practices can be your ethnicity. It doesn't necessarily have to be, oh, your ancestry is this. If that's the case, it would not be any ethnicity because they didn't have DNA sequencing or genomic sequencing in the old period. And they still had a very strong culture, right? So, this is my anthropological textbook here, and it is giving me clear-cut understanding on what ethnicity is. It can be based off various factors, complex factors. So it says ethnic identities tend to be more complex in their definitions than racial categories. So it's kind of a difference. Being rooted in a wider variety of characteristics than simply physical appearance. So racial is only physical appearance, whereas ethnicity includes physical appearance, or it may include physical appearance, like in the case of the ancient Egyptians in the old period. They were describing themselves as Kim Black, and their god was called Kim Black. Not only that, all of their deities had some type of Kim Black attribute to it. They said that Isis was birthed from Hathor, and she was called the Black Child. And one of her names was called Aset Kim, which means black woman. So this is in primary materials. I got to go up what's in the primary materials as an unbiased researcher. I can't be, feeling race theories, and this is it. All right, y'all have a good day. My next video is going to be on Afroasiatic being completely unestablished. I think I got to do part 2 of the Afroasiatic, And that's another thing with Afro-Asiatic. A lot of race theories are in that. A lot of people who are Muslims and Christians are in these fields, and it do poses problematic issues with the data, especially when it comes relating to understudied African history, um, dealing with us. So peace and blessings.